Cancel the wedding. Get up and go to your daughter-in-law's house. My late husband told me in a dream. I woke up shaking. I didn't understand, but his voice sounded so real that I had to obey. I went to Valerie's house. The door was slightly open. I heard laughter inside. I moved closer, and what I saw left me ice cold. My daughter-in-law had a plan to destroy my son. I woke up at 4 a.m. My heart was pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. The sheets were soaked in cold sweat and my hands were shaking uncontrollably. But it wasn't fear that woke me. It was his voice, the voice of Henry, my husband, my partner of 42 years, the man who died 8 months ago in that godforsaken hospital bed, squeezing my hand as I promised him I would take care of our son Matthew. And now I was hearing him again. "Catherine, get up. Go to Valerie's house. Now." It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a distant echo of my memory playing tricks on me. It was real. So real I could still smell the pipe tobacco that clung to his clothes every night when he came home from the factory. That smell that made me feel safe, protected, loved. I sat up in bed, breathing hard, looking at the clock on the nightstand. 4:12 a.m. Outside, the city was still asleep. The streets of my quiet suburb were silent, only broken by the distant bark of a stray dog. Am I going crazy? That was the first thing I thought. But then I remembered his exact words in the dream. "Cancel the wedding. Go to your daughter-in-law's house. The door will be open. What you see will break your heart, but it will save you from something worse." The wedding. The damned wedding that was supposed to happen in 5 days. The wedding where my son Matthew, my only son, the boy I raised between bolts of fabric and sewing machines, was going to marry Valerie Montes, the woman he met just a year and a half ago at a business conference in Chicago. Valerie. The perfect woman, or so I thought. Tall, thin, with that smile that showed perfect teeth and calculated dimples. Always dressed in designer clothes, always smelling of expensive French perfume, always saying the exact words a mother-in-law wants to hear. "Oh, Mrs. Reyes, you're like the mother I never had. I'm so lucky to be joining this wonderful family. I promise I'll take care of Matthew, just like you have his whole life." Lies, all of it. But I didn't know that then. I got out of bed, my legs trembling. My reflection in the mirror showed a 67-year-old woman who suddenly looked 80. Deep dark circles, messy gray hair, the loose skin of my neck shaking as I tried to control my breathing. "Henry, was that really you?" I spoke out loud, as if my dead husband could answer me from some corner of the room. I searched for his presence in the shadows, in the silence, in the air itself. Nothing. But the urgency was still there. Pulsing, beating, demanding that I move. I dressed quickly, black pants, a beige blouse, a sweater, because October mornings in the city are treacherous. I grabbed my car keys, my purse, and before leaving, I stopped in front of Henry's photograph in the living room. There he was, smiling with that thick mustache he never wanted to shave, his eyes full of that quiet wisdom that only comes from years of honest work. He had built our textile factory from nothing. 30 employees, contracts with department stores, respect in the industry, and I had been his partner, his wife, his confidant. If you're talking to me from wherever you are, please let this make sense. I left the house at 4:30 in the morning. The drive to the upscale Westlake area, where Matthew and Valerie had bought their new apartment, usually took 20 minutes. That morning, I did it in 15. The empty streets let me speed more than I should have. But something in my chest was pushing me to get there fast. As I drove, thoughts tumbled through my head. What if Henry was right? What if there was something terrible waiting for me? What if it was just my grieving brain playing tricks? What if Valerie caught me snooping at this hour and thought I was insane? But Henry's voice kept echoing. "The door will be open." I got to the building at 4:45, a modern 8-story complex, glass facade, perfectly manicured gardens, the kind of place my son could never have afforded on his engineering salary alone. I had put up the down payment, $150,000, a gift to start their married life off right. How naive I was. I parked the car half a block away. I didn't want the sound of the engine to alert anyone. I walked slowly toward the building. The security guard was dozing in his chair, his cap covering his eyes. He didn't see me go in. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. Each step was a louder heartbeat. Each floor was an unanswered question. 5th floor, apartment 502. And there it was. The door, slightly open, just as Henry had said in the dream. I stood frozen in front of it, my hand outstretched, but not daring to touch. From inside, I heard voices, female laughter, the sound of glasses clinking, music in the background, something electronic, nothing Matthew normally listened to. I took a deep breath and pushed the door gently. The apartment was dark, but the kitchen light was on. I moved step by step, pressed against the wall, feeling my heart rise into my throat. And then I heard her, Valerie's voice, clear, firm, without that sweet tone she always used with me. "I'm telling you, the idiot will sign everything without reading it. After the honeymoon in Greece, we'll have power of attorney, and we can move whatever we want. The factory, the accounts, the properties, everything." I covered my mouth with my hands to keep from screaming. Another woman's voice answered, laughing. "And what happens to him, to Matthew?" "Nothing. I'll dump him when he's no longer useful. Damien is waiting for me in Miami with everything ready. We already have the tickets to Madrid. 2 weeks after we're married, I'll claim domestic abuse, file for a quick divorce. I keep 50% of everything, and I disappear." My legs gave out. I had to brace myself against the wall to keep from falling. My daughter-in-law, the woman who was going to marry my son in 5 days, was planning to destroy him, and I, like a fool, had given her the tools to do it. And if you want to know how a mother protects her son from the ultimate betrayal, subscribe to Elderly Stories, because what comes next will leave you breathless. I don't know how long I stayed there, petrified against that wall, feeling the world I knew crumble like a house of cards. My legs were shaking so badly I thought they would give out at any moment. Sweat was running down my back, despite the early morning cold. Valerie kept talking, and every word was a knife straight to my heart. The stupid old woman already gifted me the apartment in the trendy downtown district. $500,000. Can you imagine? And that's just the beginning. At dinner on Tuesday, she announced she's giving me 60% of the factory shares in Matthew's name, but with the papers we're signing in Greece. The other woman let out a laugh that made me clench my fists. "You're a genius, Val, a damn genius." "No, sweetie, I'm just a woman who knows how to seize an opportunity. These new money types are the easiest. They think they're high class, but really they're just provincials with money. The mom is just some glorified seamstress who got lucky. The son is a mediocre engineer who still wears shirts his mommy irons for him. Pathetic." I felt the rage begin to replace the shock. My husband and I had built that factory with our bare hands, torn up from so much work. Henry spent 18 hours a day supervising production while I handled sales and administration. Matthew grew up among bolts of fabric and the sound of sewing machines. We were never old money, but every dollar we had was clean, earned with effort and sacrifice, and this woman was calling us provincials pathetic. I forced myself to breathe slowly. I needed to hear more. I needed to understand the full scope of her plan before I acted. I peeked just around the kitchen doorframe. Valerie was sitting at the counter, a glass of white wine in her hand. She was wearing an ivory-colored silk nightgown that probably cost more than my employee's monthly salary. Her blonde hair fell perfectly over her shoulders. She looked like a magazine model. And next to her was her friend Sarah, someone I had only met twice at family gatherings. An equally put-together, equally fake woman. "And what about that accountant? Robert?" Sarah asked. My blood ran cold. Robert Aguirre, the family accountant for 15 years, the man Henry trusted completely, the one who handled our finances, our taxes, our bank accounts, the one who had been at Henry's funeral, hugging me, telling me I could always count on him. "Robert is a genius," Valerie answered with a smile that turned my stomach. "He has everything ready, the fake documents, the shell companies registered in Indiana, the offshore accounts. He's already moved $340,000 from the factory accounts to a temporary holding account. When we get the power of attorney, it's going to be like opening a piggy bank. And he doesn't suspect anything, Matthew. Matthew, please, that man is so naive he thinks I'm marrying him for love. He thinks I'm the woman of his dreams. He looks at me like I'm some kind of saint. It's almost sweet and pathetic at the same time. They both laughed. I felt like I was going to be sick. My son, my Matthew, the little boy who used to bring me flowers from the garden every Sunday, the young man who worked as an unpaid intern to help us when the factory went through hard times, the man who cried in my arms when his father died, promising me he would always take care of me. That man was about to be destroyed by a snake in a wedding dress. "And what about the mother-in-law?" Sarah asked. "You said she's clingy." Valerie let out an exaggerated sigh. "Catherine is unbearable. Always my son this, my son that. She thinks just because she built some mediocre factory, she has the right to have an opinion on everything. But she's old, sentimental, and predictable. You tell her you're an orphan, that you always dreamed of having a family, and she just melts. She already signed the deed to the downtown apartment over to me. She gave me a pearl necklace that, according to her, was her grandmother's, as if I care about heirlooms from a family of nobodies. I had to bite my lip until it bled to stop from screaming. That necklace had belonged to my maternal grandmother. It was the only thing I had left of her after my family lost everything during the '08 recession. It wasn't worth millions, but to me, it was priceless. And I had given it to Valerie, thinking she would cherish it, that she would care for it, that one day she would give it to her children, our grandchildren. My God, I had been so stupid. "Well, in 1 week this will all be over," Valerie said, raising her glass. "Wedding on Saturday, honeymoon on Sunday, papers signed by Wednesday, and by the end of the month I'll be in Madrid with Damien counting cash. Here's to that, to smart women who know how to take advantage of fools in love." The glasses clinked, and I made the most important decision of my life. I wasn't going to say anything, not yet. I wasn't going to storm in there screaming like a lunatic, giving Valerie the chance to make up excuses or disappear before Saturday. I wasn't going to call Matthew in the middle of the night with accusations he wouldn't want to believe, because he was blinded by love. No. If this woman wanted to play dirty, I was going to teach her how a woman who survived 40 years in the American textile industry plays, a woman who built a business from scratch, who buried her husband and kept going. I backed away slowly, without making a sound, until I reached the door. I left the apartment with the same care I had used to enter. I walked down the stairs, feeling the adrenaline replace the shock. When I got to the car, I sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes, breathing deep, organizing my thoughts. Henry was right. He had saved me. But now it was up to me to save our son. I started the engine as the sun began to peek shyly between the city buildings. It was 5:30 in the morning. I had 5 days to dismantle Valerie's perfect plan. And the first thing I needed was proof that neither she nor her accomplice Robert could deny. Because if I was going to destroy my future daughter-in-law, I was going to do it in a way that taught her that underestimating a mother is the biggest mistake anyone can ever make. I drove back home, my hands steady on the wheel, and a resolve of steel in my chest. The war had just begun. I got home as the sky was already turning orange. The streets in my suburb were starting to wake up. The baker opening his shop, the man setting up his tamale cart, the woman sweeping her sidewalk every single morning without fail, the normal life of normal people who had no idea that my world had just exploded. I went into the house and locked the door. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I made myself a strong coffee, the kind Henry used to say could wake the dead. The bitter smell filled the kitchen, and for a moment, just a second, I felt like he was there with me, watching me, guiding me. "Thank you, my love," I whispered to the air. "Now help me finish this." I sat at the dining room table with a notebook and a pen. I had learned from Henry that you win in business with strategy, not impulse. And this was a business where my son's future was at stake. I wrote down everything I had heard. Valerie planned to get power of attorney during the honeymoon. Robert, our accountant, was involved. They had already moved $340,000. There were shell companies in Indiana. She had an accomplice named Damien waiting in Miami. She planned to flee to Madrid after the divorce. I looked at the list and felt the rage climb up my throat again. But this time I controlled it. Uncontrolled anger is useless. Cold, calculated anger. That's what wins battles. I needed concrete proof. I couldn't go to Matthew with just my word against his beloved Valerie's. My son was in love, blind, convinced he had found the perfect woman. If I told him what I heard without evidence, he would think I was jealous, that I didn't want to let him go, that I was the typical toxic mother-in-law who ruins marriages. No, I needed something irrefutable, and I knew exactly where to start. Robert Aguirre, the traitor who had been eating at our table for 15 years, the man Henry considered family, the one who handled every dollar that came in and out of the factory. At 8 a.m, I called the factory. Frank answered, the production supervisor who had been with us from the beginning. "Good morning, Mrs. Reyes. How are you today?" "Fine, Frank. Listen, I need you to do me a favor, and you can't mention this to anyone." There was a pause. Frank was loyal, discreet. If I asked him for silence, he would keep it. "Tell me." "I need you to go into Robert's office when he's not there. Look for any documents related to companies in Indiana, bank transfers from the last 6 months, anything that seems strange, and bring it to my house this afternoon. Is something wrong? Something I'm going to fix, but I need your help." "Count on it, ma'am. Robert never gets in before 10. I have time." I hung up feeling the first move was underway, but I needed more. I needed to know who Valerie really was, because a woman who plans something like this isn't doing it for the first time. You aren't born a professional con artist. You train. I opened my laptop, the one Matthew had given me last year, insisting I had to modernize. I Googled Valerie Montez Chicago. Photos from social events popped up, her LinkedIn profile, where she presented herself as a business consultant, Instagram posts full of perfect poses and empty motivational phrases. Everything was too polished, too perfect. Something wasn't right. I remembered what she said last night. "We already have the tickets to Madrid." I broadened the search. Valerie Montez fraud. Valerie Montez scam. Nothing relevant. I changed my strategy. If she was using a fake name or had a record, I wasn't going to find it on my own computer. I needed professional help. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had saved for years. Patricia Solis, a corporate lawyer who had helped us when we expanded the factory, a smart, discreet woman with contacts everywhere. "Patricia, it's Catherine Reyes." "Catherine, what a pleasure. How are you? I haven't heard from you in months. I need an urgent favor, and I need your absolute discretion." Her tone changed immediately. Patricia understood it was serious. "Tell me. I need to hire a private investigator, the best you know, someone who can get me complete information on a person in less than 5 days." "What kind of information?" "Criminal record, credit history, previous marriages, everything. And I also need surveillance. Photos, videos, recordings if possible." Patricia didn't ask any more questions. That was one of the reasons I liked her. "I know someone. Miranda Solis, my cousin. She's a PI, worked in the prosecutor's office for years before going private. Discreet, efficient, and fast. But she's not cheap." "I don't care about the cost. I just need results. I'm sending you her contact info right now. And Catherine, be careful." I hung up just as the doorbell rang. It was Frank. He had a manila folder under his arm and a worried expression on his face. "Mrs. Reyes, I found this in a locked drawer in Robert's desk. I had to force it." I opened the folder on the dining room table, and what I saw took my breath away. Bank transfers for $85,000, $120,000, $135,000, all to an account in the name of Midwest Textiles, LLC, a company I had never heard of. The movements dated back 8 months, right after Henry died. There were pre-signed contracts with my forged signature, blank legal documents, and worst of all, a power of attorney document, already drawn up, ready for Matthew to sign, granting Valerie total control over his present and future assets. "Son of a bitch," I muttered. Frank looked at me worried. "What's happening, Mrs. Reyes?" "A betrayal." "Frank, a betrayal that's been brewing for months. But it's over. Today, it's over." I thanked him and sent him off with instructions to keep watching for any strange movements in the office. At 11 in the morning, Miranda Solis was sitting in my living room. She was a woman in her mid-40s. Short hair, a sharp gaze. With that presence people have who are used to uncovering lies. I told her everything. The dream, the conversation I overheard, the suspicions about Robert, everything. Miranda took notes without interrupting. When I finished, she looked up. "I need 3 things from you: a recent photo of Valerie, her full address, and complete freedom to investigate without restrictions." "You have it. And I need you to do nothing until I'm finished. No confrontations, no hints. If she suspects we know anything, she'll disappear before Saturday." "How much time do you need?" 3 days. By Thursday night, you'll have a complete file." I wrote her a check for $15,000 as a retainer. Miranda tucked it away without even looking at it. "One more thing, Mrs. Reyes. In my experience, when a woman has a plan this elaborate, it's not her first time. If I find what I think I'm going to find, it's going to hurt. I'm already hurting Miranda. Now I just want justice." When she left my house, I was alone in the silence. Outside the city continued its normal rhythm, but I knew that in 3 days everything was going to change. And Valerie Montes was about to find out that underestimating a mother is a mistake that costs you everything. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Every time the phone rang, my heart jumped, expecting news from Miranda. Every time I saw Matthew, I had to bite my tongue to stop from screaming the truth at him. And every time Valerie called me with her syrupy voice to coordinate wedding details, I had to act as if nothing was wrong. But inside, I was a pressure cooker about to explode. On Tuesday afternoon, Matthew came over for lunch. He was wearing one of those white shirts I had ironed for him on Sunday, and he had that man-in-love smile that broke my soul. "Mom, are you okay? You look tired." I forced a smile as I served him the chili I had made that morning, his favorite dish since he was a kid. "I'm fine, sweetie, just wedding nerves. You know how I am." He laughed as he took a fresh tortilla. "Valerie says you're the best mother-in-law in the world, that she wishes her mom had been like you." Every word was a dagger. Valerie had told him her mother died when she was 12, that she grew up with an abusive aunt, that she always dreamed of having a real family, all lies, all calculated to win my son's sympathy. "And how are the travel plans coming?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Incredible! Valerie has everything organized. 2 weeks in Greece, Athens, Santorini, Mykonos. It's going to be the trip of a lifetime. The trip where she planned to have him sign his own financial death warrant. I'm so happy for you, son." Matthew put down his fork and took my hand. His eyes, so much like Henry's, looked at me with tenderness. "I know it's been hard for you since Dad left, and I know me getting married means I won't be here every day. But I want you to know, you'll always be the most important thing in my life. You, and now Valerie, my complete family." I had to blink fast to hold back the tears. "I know, sweetie, I know." When he left, I stayed in the kitchen looking at his empty plate, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing my shoulders. I couldn't fail him, not after protecting him his whole life. On Wednesday night, Miranda called. "Mrs. Reyes, I need you to come to my office. Now." Her tone allowed no argument. I dressed quickly and drove to her office downtown. It was a discreet building, one of those that blend in but hide half the city's secrets. Miranda met me in her office. On the desk was a thick brown folder with a label that read, "Valerie Montes, Full Investigation." "Sit down, Mrs. Reyes, and prepare yourself." I sat. My hands were shaking. Miranda opened the folder and started passing me photographs. The first one showed Valerie kissing a man on a beach. It wasn't Matthew. "This is Damian Cortez. He lives in Miami. He has a condo in a high-rise valued at $600,000. Officially, he's a tourism consultant, but my sources indicate he specializes in marriage fraud. He and Valerie have been a couple for 3 years. 3 years? My son had only known her for a year and a half. Valerie met him first, but Damien didn't have the profile she was looking for. Too much debt, too many vices. So they decided to work together. She finds wealthy victims, marries them, strips them of their assets, and then they flee together with the loot. Miranda passed more photos. Valerie and Damien in expensive restaurants, on a yacht, entering a hotel in Tulum together. This is from 2 months ago, when your son thought Valerie was at a yoga retreat in rural New York. I felt nausea rise in my throat. "There's more," Miranda continued. Her voice was firm but understanding. "Valerie Montes isn't a real name. Her name is Veronica Lastiri. She's 32, not 28 like she told your son. And this is the worst part." Miranda pulled out official documents, marriage certificates. She has been married 3 times before. The first time was in Phoenix, to a 60-year-old widowed businessman. The marriage lasted 8 months. He reported her for fraud after she emptied his accounts and disappeared. The case is still open. The second marriage was in Indiana, a civil engineer with properties. Same pattern, quick marriage power of attorney theft, divorce, and flight. This time she managed to get away with almost $390,000. The third marriage was in Austin, just 2 years ago. This one was the most elaborate. She married the owner of a hardware store chain, but this man was more careful. When he discovered inconsistencies in her story, he confronted her. Valerie fled before completing the theft, but she had already managed to transfer $60,000. Miranda left the documents on the table. "Your son, Mrs. Reyes, is victim number 4. The silence in that office was so heavy I could barely breathe. In all 3 previous cases, she worked with the same accomplice, Damien. And, interestingly, in the 2 most recent cases, there was also complicity from internal accountants or financial advisors, people who knew the victims and had access to privileged information. Robert. Of course, Robert fit the pattern perfectly." "Why isn't she in jail?" I asked, my voice broken. "Because she's smart. She changes her name, her city, her appearance, and because the victims, especially men, often don't report it out of shame. They prefer to absorb the loss rather than publicly admit they were conned by a woman." Miranda pulled out more documents, bank statements, emails, recovered text messages. "I have evidence of transfers between Robert Aguirre and an account in Damien Cortez's name, $340,000 in total, moved in small amounts over the last 8 months to avoid suspicion. I also have recordings of phone conversations between Valerie and Damien where they discuss the details of the plan. How did you get the recordings? Legal methods, within what the law allows for private investigations. Surveillance communication intercepts with prior warrants. Let's just say I have contacts who still owe me favors from my days at the prosecutor's office." I leaned back in the chair, feeling my whole body ache. "What do I do now, Miranda?" She closed the folder and looked me directly in the eyes. "You have 2 options. First, you show this to your son right now, cancel the wedding, file criminal charges against Valerie and Robert, and let the justice system take its course. It's the fastest way. And the second," a small, almost imperceptible smile appeared on Miranda's face. "The second is we let Valerie believe her plan is working. We let her go ahead until Saturday, and we catch her red-handed, in front of everyone. With no possibility of escape or excuses. Public justice. Complete humiliation. And a lesson she will never forget." I thought of my son, of his dreams, his inevitable pain, but I also thought of all the other victims. The men Valerie had already destroyed. The future victims if she got away with this again. And I made my decision. We go with the second option, but I need it to be perfect. No doubts left. When she falls, I want her to fall so hard she can never get up again. Miranda nodded. "Then we have 3 days to prepare the final blow." I left that office with the folder under my arm and iron determination in my chest. Valerie wanted to play. Fine. I was going to teach her how a woman plays when she has nothing left to lose and everything to defend. On Thursday morning, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in days. There was no more fear or doubt. Just one goal set the perfect trap. Miranda and I had spent half the night designing every detail. She was right about one thing. If we were going to do this, it had to be flawless. No room for error. No possibility of Valerie escaping. At 9 a.m, I called Matthew. "Son, I need you to come to the house this afternoon. I'm going to make an important announcement about the factory, and I want you to be here. Bring Valerie too." I heard the surprise in his voice. "An announcement? What kind of announcement?" "You'll see. It's something good, I promise. Something your father would have wanted." That was enough to convince him. Matthew had always respected his father's memory above all else. I hung up and dialed the next number. Robert Aguirre. "Mrs. Reyes, how are you?" I was just reviewing the numbers for the quarterly close. His voice was smooth, professional, the voice of a man who had perfected the art of lying while looking you in the eye. "Robert, I need you to come to my house this afternoon, at 6. I'm making an important family announcement, and since you're part of the family, I want you to be present." There was a brief pause, almost imperceptible, but I caught it. "Of course, Mrs. Reyes, I'll be there." I smiled. The mouse had just walked into the trap. I spent the rest of the morning preparing the house. I cleaned the living room, made coffee and homemade cinnamon cookies, arranged the armchairs so everyone could sit comfortably. I wanted everything to seem like a normal, warm, trusting family gathering. Miranda arrived at 3 p.m. with a black briefcase. "Are you ready for this?" "More than ready." She took several notarized documents out of the briefcase. We reviewed them together word for word. Everything had to be legally sound. We couldn't give Valerie the slightest legal loophole to escape. "These are the documents you will show them this afternoon," Miranda explained. "Donation of shares, property, deeds, trusts. All real, all notarized. Valerie and Robert are going to believe you just handed them the jackpot. And then you let them savor the victory. Let them think they've won. Tomorrow is Friday, the day before the wedding. They'll be euphoric, confident. And Saturday, the trap springs." Exactly. At 5:30 they started to arrive. First Matthew, with that nervous smile of someone who doesn't know what to expect but trusts his mother. Then Valerie, perfect as always in a beige dress and heels that probably cost more than my worker's weekly salary. "My dear mother-in-law," she said, kissing my cheek. The French perfume hit me like a slap. "What's this mystery?" "You'll see, dear. Let's just wait for Robert." The accountant appeared at exactly 6, punctual, professional, with his leather briefcase and that smile that now turned my stomach. I sat them all in the living room, Valerie next to Matthew on the main sofa, holding his hand, Robert in the armchair. His notebook ready as always. I remained standing in front of them. I took a deep breath. "Thank you all for coming. I know you're busy with the wedding preparations, but I needed to do this before Saturday." Matthew looked at me with curiosity, Valerie with a polite smile, Robert with professional attention. "Since Henry died, I've been thinking a lot about the future, about the factory, about everything we built together, and I've come to a decision." I took out the documents Miranda had prepared. I placed them on the coffee table. "Matthew, you are my only son, my pride. Everything your father and I did was for you. And now that you're starting your own family—" I saw Valerie's eyes light up. I could almost hear the calculations running in her head. "I have decided to transfer 60% of the shares of Reyes Textiles to you, effective immediately." Matthew's jaw dropped. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet. There's more." I took out another document. "Valerie, I know you haven't had an easy life. I know what it's like to grow up without a mother's love. So I want to give you something that is just yours." I saw her lean forward. Her eyes were shining with a greed she wasn't even trying to hide. "The downtown apartment I bought last year is in my name. I have decided to transfer it to you as a wedding gift. It's a $500,000 deed, completely clear of debt." Valerie put her hands to her chest in a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Mrs. Reyes, I can't accept something like this." "Of course you can. It's already decided. The papers are ready. All they need is your signature." I saw her exchange a lightning-fast glance with Robert, a look my son didn't notice because he was wiping away tears of emotion. "And there's one more thing," I continued. "Since you'll be gone for 2 weeks on your honeymoon, and because I trust you both completely, I've prepared a power of attorney so Valerie can handle certain administrative issues in your absence, Matthew. Day-to-day things. Invoices, suppliers. Nothing complicated." Matthew nodded without thinking. "That makes sense. Valerie is really organized with that stuff." Of course she was. Organized for stealing. Robert cleared his throat. "Mrs. Reyes, if I may, as your financial advisor, I think it's prudent that we review these documents carefully. These are important decisions." "I've already reviewed them, Robert. They're perfect, just as you yourself prepared them last week." I saw him pale for just a second before he regained his composure. "Of course. I just wanted to make sure everything was in order. Everything is in perfect order." I passed them the documents one by one. Matthew signed them with hands trembling with emotion. Valerie signed, trying to control the victorious smirk that threatened to break out on her face. When we finished, I served coffee. Valerie couldn't stop talking. "I don't know how to thank you, Mrs. Reyes. It's more than I ever dreamed of, I promise you. I will take care of Matthew and everything you've built as if it were my own." "Oh, don't you worry, dear. I know exactly what you're going to do." The sentence came out so naturally that no one noticed the double meaning, except me, and maybe Miranda, who was waiting outside in her car, documenting everything. When they left, Matthew hugged me so tightly he almost broke my ribs. "Mom, you didn't have to do this. It's too much. Your father would have wanted me to. You are his legacy son, and now all of this is yours." I watched him leave with Valerie, hand in hand, planning their perfect future. They didn't know that future had just become an illusion, about to shatter. I closed the door and called Miranda. "Did you get it all? Every word, every gesture, every signature. And wait until you see what my contacts found tailing Valerie this afternoon." "What did they find?" "After leaving your house, she went straight to a cafe. She met up with Damien. They're celebrating. I have video of them toasting with champagne and laughing. In the recording, she literally says, 'The old fool fell for it. In a week we'll be in Madrid counting the money.'" I smiled, a cold smile that Henry would have recognized. The smile of someone who has just won a chess game, before the opponent even realizes they're in checkmate. "Perfect. Now, let's prepare for Saturday. It's all ready. The church, the technicians, the court officers. Everything coordinated to the second." I hung up and poured myself a glass of the aged tequila Henry saved for special occasions. "For you, my love, for continuing to watch over us, from wherever you are." I toasted alone in my living room, knowing that in 48 hours, Valerie Montes was going to discover that the worst decision of her life was underestimating a mother. Friday dawned gray, with those low clouds that threaten a storm but never rain, as if the sky itself knew something was about to break. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my son's face when he found out the truth. That inevitable pain that no mother wants to cause her child, but that is sometimes necessary to save him. Miranda arrived at my house at 7 a.m. She was carrying 2 large suitcases and an expression of absolute determination. "Mrs. Reyes, we have a lot to review before tomorrow." She spread everything out on the dining room table as if assembling a giant puzzle. Photographs, documents, videos on a tablet, audio recordings, bank statements, forged marriage certificates. It was overwhelming and devastating. "Let's start at the beginning," Miranda said, pointing to a photo of Valerie. but not the Valerie I knew. This one had dark brown hair, was shorter, no makeup. This photo is from 6 years ago. Veronica Lastieri, originally from Trenton, New Jersey, only daughter of middle-class merchants who died in a car accident when she was 22. So, the dead mother part is true. Partially. Her parents died, yes, but not when she was a child, and what she did next is where the real story begins. Miranda passed more photos. Veronica in college, Veronica graduating with a business degree, Veronica working at a bank. She was a normal girl, good grades, stable job, no record, until she met Damien Cortez. The photo of a man about 38 years old appeared, handsome in a calculated way, light eyes, a salesman's smile, expensive clothes. Damien is a professional con man. He has priors in 3 states for fraud, spent 2 years in prison for a Ponzi scheme that cost investors over $20 million. He got out 5 years ago, and since then he's dedicated himself to more sophisticated scams that are harder to prosecute. How did he convince her? He didn't convince her. He trained her. Veronica had the perfect tools, intelligence, ambition, and a loneliness that made her vulnerable. Damien saw potential. He turned her into his partner and his lover. Miranda put a diagram on the table with dates and names. First victim, Rodrigo Salazar, businessman from Phoenix, 62 years old, recent widower, vulnerable. Veronica posed as an interior designer. 3-month romance, quick marriage, 8 months of systematic theft. She managed to transfer $280,000 before he realized. When he confronted her, she disappeared. He filed a report, but by then Veronica had already changed her identity. Second victim, Antonio Bermudez, civil engineer in Indiana. 54 years old, divorced with properties. Here she refined her technique. She presented herself as a business consultant. Similar pattern, but more elaborate. This time she worked with a local corrupt accountant. Stole $390,000. Antonio was more aggressive legally, so they had to flee faster. The case is still open. Third victim, Fernando Rios, hardware store owner in Austin. 48 years old, never married. This was their mistake. Fernando was more suspicious. He hired an investigator when he noticed inconsistencies in Veronica's story. She detected the investigation and fled before completing the robbery. She only managed to get away with $60,000. Miranda looked at me directly. After that failure, Veronica and Damien took a year off. They traveled through Europe, probably planning their next move. And a year and a half ago, she appeared in Chicago with a new identity, Valerie Montez. Blonde hair, blue contact lenses, a completely fabricated backstory. And that's where she met Matthew. I felt my throat tighten. My son never stood a chance, did he? I'm sorry, Mrs. Reyes. Matthew was selected, researched, studied. Veronica knew everything about him before that chance meeting at the business conference. She knew he was an only son, that you had just been widowed, that the factory was in a moment of transition. He was the perfect target. Miranda pulled out more documents, printed emails. I have access to the correspondence between Veronica and Damien. The whole plan is here, dates, amounts, strategies. They even have a procedure manual. That's how professional they are. She read one of the emails aloud. The son is perfect, naive romantic, self-esteem issues since college. The mother is the real prize, recent widow vulnerable with liquid assets and properties. If we play our cards right, this could be the definitive score, the one that lets us retire. Every word was a stab. There's more, Miranda continued. Robert Aguirre isn't his real name either. His name is Robert Aguirre Sanchez. But he has an outstanding warrant in Arizona for embezzlement. He met Damien in prison. When he got out, Damien recruited him for his scheme. Robert has been the inside man in 3 of their last 4 hits. How did he get to us? Henry hired him 15 years ago, when Robert was still honest, or at least seemed to be. But 6 years ago, he got into gambling trouble, lost everything. And that's when Damien contacted him. He's been their mole ever since, leaking information, preparing false documents, facilitating transfers. Miranda opened a folder with bank statements. The $340,000 he already moved is just the beginning. With the power of attorney Matthew signed yesterday, And the documents Valerie plans to have him sign in Greece. They could have emptied the factory accounts, sold the properties, liquidated everything. We're talking about over $3.5 million in total assets. $3.5 million, a lifetime of work, Henry's sweat, the sacrifices we made. All of it was going to disappear in a matter of weeks. Do we have enough evidence to put them in jail? We have enough to bury all three of them: aggravated fraud, document forgery, criminal conspiracy, use of a false identity. We are talking about combined sentences that could add up to over 20 years. Miranda took out her tablet and showed me videos. Valerie and Damien on the beach, in restaurants, entering and leaving hotels. The dates corresponded exactly with the weekends Valerie supposedly spent at yoga retreats or visiting her sick aunt. Then she showed me the audio recordings, phone conversations between Valerie and Damien where they talked about that idiot Matthew and how the old woman is even dumber than we thought. Every insult lit a new fire in me. And this, Miranda saved the best for last. This is the recording from the day before yesterday, when they went to celebrate at the cafe after leaving your house. In the video, Valerie and Damien were toasting with champagne glasses. The quality was excellent. Miranda had used professional equipment. "The old woman fell for it," Valerie said, laughing. "She signed everything. The apartment, the shares, the power of attorney. In a week, when we're in Madrid, we'll have liquidated everything. $3 million, baby. It's our best work yet. Here's to that, and to all the idiots who believe in true love." The glasses clinked. I closed my eyes, feeling the rage burn inside me. "What do you need me to do tomorrow?" I asked in a controlled voice. "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You just have to arrive at the church like any proud mother. We'll handle the rest." "How is it going to work?" Miranda smiled. "Magic, Mrs. Reyes. Pure magic." Friday afternoon, just when I thought I had seen the worst. My phone rang. It was Valerie. "Mother-in-law, would you like to come to my bachelorette party tonight? I know you don't normally invite the mother-in-law, but you are so special to me. I want you to be there." Every word sounded sweet, calculated, perfect. Miranda, who was still at my house finalizing details, shook her head violently. But something inside me told me I had to go. I needed to see her one last time in her consummate actress role. I needed to burn every detail of her betrayal into my memory so I wouldn't falter tomorrow. "I'd love to, dear." "What time?" "At 8. At the Gardenia Lounge in the upscale neighborhood. And Mrs. Reyes, you don't have to bring a gift or anything. Your presence is enough." How generous. I didn't have to bring a gift to my own public humiliation. I hung up, and Miranda looked at me worried. "That's not a good idea. If you go there, you have to act perfectly. You can't let them see even a hint of suspicion. Can you do that?" "Are you sure? Because if Valerie detects anything, even a strange look, she could get spooked and flee before tomorrow." "I've been faking it all week. One more night won't kill me." I got ready carefully. A simple black dress, the pearl necklace that had been my mother's, a little makeup to hide the exhaustion. In the mirror, I saw a 67-year-old woman who had aged 10 years in 1 week. But I also saw determination. I arrived at the Gardenia Lounge at 8 on the dot. It was one of those elegant places with high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and waiters in white gloves. Soft background music, floral arrangements that probably cost more than the monthly salary of 3 of my workers. Valerie was in the center of the room, radiant in a short white dress that showed off her tanned legs, surrounded by friends, all young, all dressed up, all laughing as if there were no worries in the world. "Mrs. Reyes." Valerie came toward me with open arms. She hugged me, her expensive perfume now making me nauseous. "You look beautiful. Come on, girls. I want you to meet my mother-in-law, the most generous woman in the world." Her friends greeted me with that superficial politeness of someone being polite, but who doesn't really care. They sat me at a table near the dance floor. A waitress brought me a glass of sparkling wine I didn't ask for. For the first hour, Everything was relatively normal. Music, dancing, laughter, Valerie opening gifts, expensive lingerie, spa vouchers, bottles of champagne, the kind of things a bride would expect at her party. But then the show began. One of Valerie's friends, a tall brunette with too much makeup, took the microphone. "Okay, girls, now for the fun part. We're going to play Advice for the Bride. Everyone has to give one piece of advice on how to handle your husband and your mother-in-law." General laughter. I felt my stomach tighten. One by one, her friends gave advice that was increasingly offensive, disguised as humor. "Never let your mother-in-law have a key to your house. That's like giving her permission to ruin your marriage. If your mother-in-law cooks better than you, pretend you like her food, but always say yours is different. Not better, just different. Remember, your husband had a first woman in his life, his mom. Your job is to make him love you more." Each phrase was accompanied by glances in my direction, knowing smiles, stifled giggles. I smiled. I nodded. I took sips of my wine. Inside, I was counting the hours until her destruction. Then Valerie took the microphone. Her cheeks were flushed from the alcohol. Her eyes shone with barely contained malice. "I have the best advice of all," she said, slurring her words slightly. "Love your mothers-in-law. Give them all the attention they need, because lonely widowed mothers-in-law are the most generous, especially when they think you've finally found the love of your life." Her friends burst out laughing. Valerie looked directly at me. "Right, Mrs. Reyes, you've been so generous with me. The apartment, the shares, everything. It's just, you're just so sweet, so trusting, so—" She paused, searching for the word. "Naive," one of her friends suggested. More laughter. Valerie pretended to be shocked. "No, I was going to say maternal. Mrs. Reyes is very maternal, always worried, always wanting to help, always present." The way she said present sounded like a complaint disguised as a compliment. Another friend approached me with a condescending smile. "Mrs. Reyes, do you have any advice for Valerie? You know, from an older woman to a young woman starting her married life." They all looked at me waiting, probably expecting me to say something foolish, something they could turn into a joke. I took a sip of my wine. I let the silence stretch for a moment, and then I spoke in a calm voice. "My only advice is this. In life, everything you do comes back to you, the good and the bad, the blessings and the betrayals. It might not be today, and it might not be tomorrow, but it always comes back." The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then Valerie laughed nervously. How deep, mother-in-law, very philosophical. But something in my tone had unsettled her. I saw it in how her posture changed, in how she exchanged a quick look with her friend Sarah. The rest of the night was more of the same. Veiled comments about meddling mothers-in-law, jokes about older women who don't know when to let go of their sons, laughter that sounded more and more forced as I maintained my serene smile. At 11, I said my goodbyes. "I have to go, girls. Tomorrow is a big day and I need to rest." Valerie walked me to the door. In private, her mask slipped for just a second. "Thanks for coming, Mrs. Reyes. I know it wasn't easy. My friends can be a little intense." "Don't worry, dear. I understand perfectly how things are." I hugged her. I felt her body tense slightly. "I'll see you at the church tomorrow," I said close to her ear. "It's going to be a day neither of us will ever forget." I pulled away before she could answer. I walked to my car without looking back. In the car, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, I finally let out the tears I had been holding back all night. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure rage. Those women had spent 3 hours humiliating me, laughing at me, treating me as if I were a foolish, sentimental old woman who didn't know what was happening around her. And I had to smile, nod, pretend I didn't understand the insults disguised as jokes. But tomorrow they would find out that the foolish old woman knew exactly what was happening, and that she had been 10 steps ahead the entire time. I dried my tears, started the car, and drove home. Miranda called when I arrived. How was it? Worse than I imagined, but also more motivating. Are we still on for tomorrow? More than ever. I want her to suffer, Miranda. I want her to feel every second of what's coming. Then get ready, because tomorrow at 2 p.m., Valerie Montez's world is going to collapse in a way she will never forget. I hung up and went to the room that had been Henry's and mine for 42 years. I sat on his side of the bed and spoke aloud. Tomorrow, my love. Tomorrow we finish what you started with that dream, and I promise you, you're going to be proud. Outside, it began to rain, as if the sky had finally decided to weep for what was to come. I didn't sleep a minute that night. I sat in the living room, in the same armchair where Henry used to read the newspaper every morning with his coffee, watching the hands of the clock move with torturous slowness. Every second was an eternity, every minute. A reminder that the most important day of this nightmare was about to begin. At 3 in the morning, I made coffee. There was no point in even trying to sleep. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, images, rehearsed conversations. How would Matthew react? What would he say when he saw the proof? Would he forgive me for not telling him sooner? That last question tormented me more than all the others. Because yes, I was about to save my son from a ruthless con artist. But I was also about to shatter his heart, to break the illusion of the love he had found, to teach him that not all people are what they seem. What kind of mother does that? A mother who loves him enough to do the right thing, even when it hurts, I said aloud. At 5 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Miranda. Are you awake? I haven't closed my eyes. Good, because I need you to hear something. A recording played on the other end of the line. It was Valerie, talking on the phone with Damien. The conversation was from last night, after the bachelorette party. I swear, for a moment I got scared, Valerie was saying. The old woman looked at me funny when I said goodbye, like she knew something. You're paranoid, baby. If she knew anything, she would have already made a scene. These old women are predictable. Tomorrow you get married. The day after we're in Greece. And in a week we'll be in Madrid counting money. You're right. It's just, I don't know. There was something in her eyes. Something different. Valerie, listen to me. In 4 hours, you become Valerie Reyes, legal wife, with access to everything. We've already won. You just have to endure the ceremony, smile for the photos, and go with the flow. Can you do that? A pause. Yes, I can do that. That's my girl. I'll see you on the other side, baby. When this is all over and we're on the beach, we're going to laugh about this. The recording ended. We tailed her last night after she left the lounge, Miranda explained. She went straight to her apartment and called Damien. She's nervous, but not nervous enough to run. She's going through with it. Perfect. Mrs. Reyes, are you sure you want to do it this way? We can still stop her before the ceremony. I can call the police right now. Have her arrested at her home. No, I want her to walk down that aisle. I want her to believe she won. I want her to feel the victory in her hands, right before we rip it away. Understood. Everything is set then. The technicians will arrive at the church at 10 to install the equipment. The plainclothes officers will be in position at 1, and I'll be in the control booth. And Matthew, Miranda sighed. That's the hard part. We have to tell him before the ceremony. Half an hour before, we figure. Enough time for him to process the information, but not so much time that he does something reckless. I'll tell him. Mrs. Reyes, he's my son Miranda. This has to come from me. There was a long silence. All right, but I'll be there with you, with the entire file. He'll need to see the proof immediately, or he won't believe it. I know. We hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. At 7 in the morning, I got in the shower. I let the hot water run over my body for half an hour, trying to wash away the tension I had stored in every muscle. It didn't work. I dried off in front of the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed to have aged a decade in 1 week. Deeper wrinkles around my eyes, dark circles that no makeup could completely hide, gray hairs that shone more than before. but there was something new in those eyes too. Ferocity. I dressed with care. The navy blue dress I had bought for my son's wedding, low, elegant heels, my grandmother's pearl necklace, subtle makeup, hair pulled back in a simple bun. I looked exactly like I was supposed to look, a proud mother on her only son's wedding day. No one would suspect I was carrying an arsenal of evidence that would destroy the bride. At 10 in the morning, I arrived at St. Jerome's Church. It was a beautiful 17th century church in the heart of our city. High ceilings with wooden beams, stained glass windows that painted the floor with color when the sun came in, a hand-carved marble altar. Henry and I had been married there 43 years ago. Matthew had his first communion in that same church. It was our sacred place, and today, it was going to become the stage for Valerie Montez's downfall. Miranda's technicians were already working, disguised as church staff, installing hidden cameras, checking connections, testing the audio system. Everything had to be perfect. Father Julian, the priest who had known our family for decades, approached me with a worried expression. "Catherine, are you sure about what you're doing? This is unconventional." "Father, if you knew what that woman plans to do, you would understand why it's necessary." "I showed him the complete file this morning," Miranda intervened, having just arrived. "Father Julian is on board with the plan." The priest nodded grimly. "It's a terrible situation, but you're right. Matthew needs to see the truth. And if this is the only way, it is." At 11, the guests began to arrive. Aunts, cousins, family, friends, all smiling, all excited. No one knew what was about to happen. I greeted them mechanically, kisses on the cheek, brief hugs, comments on how beautiful everything was, on how happy I must be, on how lovely the bride was, if they only knew. At 12:30, Matthew arrived, my son, my only son, dressed in a black tuxedo that made him look more mature, more of a man. He was nervous, adjusting his tie every 2 minutes, checking his phone, smiling with that mix of happiness and panic that all grooms have. "Mom." He hugged me tightly. He smelled like the cologne he'd worn since college. "I can't believe I'm getting married today." I had to bite my lip to keep from crying. "Son, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." "Now, Mom, the ceremony starts in an hour and a half. That's why. It's important. Come with me." I saw the confusion on his face, but he followed me. I led him to a small office in the back of the church where Miranda was waiting for us, with the complete file spread out on the desk. "Mom, what is all this? Who is she?" "Matthew, sit down, please." "I don't want to sit down. What is going on?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment I would break his heart to save his life. "Son, Valerie is not who she says she is." I saw his face shift from confusion to irritation. "What are you talking about, Mom? If this is some last-minute attempt to stop the wedding because you have doubts, listen to me." Something in my tone made him stop. He looked into my eyes and, for the first time in days, he really saw me. Valerie's real name is Veronica Lestieri. She is a professional con artist. She has been married 3 times before for the same purpose, to steal. And you are her 4th victim. "You're crazy. Miranda, show him." Miranda began to pass him photos, documents, marriage certificates, bank statements, videos. I watched the color drain from my son's face with every piece of proof. No, it can't be. There's more." We showed him the video of Valerie with Damien, the audio recordings, the detailed plans, everything. Matthew collapsed into the chair, his hands shaking, staring at the proof, unable to believe it. "Since when?" "For a week. I had a dream. Your father. He warned me." He looked at me, his eyes full of tears. "And you waited until today, until an hour before the wedding?" "I needed proof, son, and I needed her to believe she had won. It's the only way to make sure she doesn't escape." Matthew put his head in his hands, his breathing ragged. Outside, we heard the music begin. The guests were arriving. Valerie would be getting ready right now. adjusting her dress, practicing her perfect smile, not knowing her world was about to collapse. Matthew couldn't stop shaking. He was sitting in that small office, surrounded by proof that destroyed everything he thought he knew about his life, staring at the photographs as if they were of someone else, as if it couldn't be real. "Son?" I tried to touch him, but he pulled his hand away. "No, don't touch me. I need to think." He stood up suddenly, pacing the small space. He loosened his tie. He ran his hands through his hair. He was breathing like he couldn't get enough air. "A year and a half," he muttered. "A year and a half of my life. Everything was a lie." "I'm so sorry, Matthew." "You're sorry." He looked at me with a mix of pain and rage I had never seen in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you wait until today?" "Because I needed to protect you. If I had told you sooner, without enough proof, she would have run, she would have disappeared, and in 6 months, she'd be doing the same thing to another man, to another family." Miranda stepped in her voice, professional but gentle. "Mr. Reyes, your mother did the right thing. Veronica is a professional. If she had suspected anything, she would have vanished with the $340,000 she already moved from the accounts, and you never would have been able to recover it or prosecute her." Matthew sank back into the chair. $340,000, he repeated like an automaton, from the factory accounts. "Robert helped her? He's involved too." I saw his jaw tighten. His hands clench into fists. "Robert, the accountant my father trusted, the man I trusted." "I'm sorry, son." "Stop saying you're sorry." His voice broke. Just tell me what we do now, because there are 300 people out there waiting. My boss is out there, our clients, the entire family." I looked at Miranda. She nodded. "We have 2 options," I said. "We can cancel everything right now, make an announcement, apologize, and let the police arrest her discreetly in the back. Or we let the ceremony begin, and when Father Julian asks if anyone has any objections, we show them everything." Matthew looked at me as if I had lost my mind. "You want to humiliate her publicly. I want everyone to see who she really is. I want any other victims who might see this on social media to know that someone finally stopped her. I want every person in that church to understand why this is necessary." "Mom, that's cruel." "Excessive," I finished for him. "She was planning to destroy you, son. She was planning to leave you ruined, heartbroken, and penniless, all while she laughed about you with her real boyfriend on a beach in Spain. Do you really think she deserves to be treated delicately?" The silence stretched, long and heavy. Outside, we heard the wedding coordinator announce that there were 15 minutes until the ceremony. "It's your decision," I said finally. "I can live with either option, but you're the one who has to live with the consequences. What do you want to do?" Matthew closed his eyes. I saw him struggling internally, processing the pain, the betrayal, the rage. When he opened them, there was something different in his gaze, something cold, hard, something I recognized because I had seen it in his father's eyes when someone tried to cheat him. "Let the ceremony begin," he said, his voice controlled. "I want to see her walk down that aisle in her $18,000 dress. I want her to smile for the cameras. I want her to believe, for just 5 more minutes, that she won. Are you sure?" "Completely. Because when this is all over, I want her to remember this moment for the rest of her damn life." Miranda smiled faintly. "Then everything is ready. The officers are in position. I have the audio and video equipment connected. When you give the signal, we'll project everything onto the screens we installed at the altar." "Screens?" Matthew asked. "We put them up this morning, supposedly to broadcast the ceremony to the guests in the back, but in reality, they're going to show the truth," I completed. Matthew stood up. He adjusted his tuxedo. He straightened his shoulders. "Let's go. Let's finish this." We walked out of the office. The guests were all in their seats. 300 people dressed elegantly, waiting to witness the start of a happy marriage. They had no idea they were about to witness a public execution. Matthew walked to the altar with firm steps. I walked with him to the entrance, where mothers usually wait. He kissed my forehead. "Thank you for saving me, Mom, even though it hurts." "Always, son, always." I took my place in the front row. Frank sat next to me, Miranda on my other side. They both knew what was about to happen. The music changed. The traditional Pachelbel's canon began to play. The large doors at the back of the church opened, and there she was, Valerie Montes, or Veronica Lastieri, or whatever the hell her name really was. The dress was spectacular, immaculate white, a 10-foot train, beadwork that sparkled with every movement. The veil covered her face, but you could see her smile, that smile of triumph. She walked on the arm of an uncle she had hired to play the part of the father she supposedly lost as a child, another actor in her theater of lies. The guests stood up. Some pulled out tissues, emotional. Others took pictures. Everyone was smiling, except me. I watched her advance down that aisle, and I counted the seconds until her destruction. She reached the altar. Matthew waited for her with a neutral expression. If Valerie noticed anything strange, she didn't show it. She smiled at him from behind the veil. He did not smile back. Father Julian began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the presence of God to join in holy matrimony, Matthew and Valerie." His voice was firm, but I knew he was nervous. This wasn't something he did every day. He continued with the traditional readings. The guests listened attentively. Valerie maintained her perfect posture, her delicate hands holding the bouquet of white roses. Then, the moment came. If anyone present knows any reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, let them speak now, or forever hold their peace. The silence in the church was absolute. Matthew took one step forward. "I have an objection." The murmuring began immediately. Hundreds of heads turned in confusion. Valerie looked at him uncomprehending. "Matthew, what are you doing?" "Showing the truth." I looked at Miranda. She pressed a button on her tablet. The screens we had installed on both sides of the altar lit up, and the projection began. First, the photographs. Valerie with Damien on the beach. Kissing, holding each other, entering hotels. The murmurs turned into gasps. "What is this?" Valerie tried to move toward the screens, but Matthew stopped her. "Wait, there's more." Then came the videos. Valerie and Damien toasting in the cafe. Her voice, clear, crisp, saying, "The old fool fell for it. In a week, we'll be in Madrid counting the money." The screaming started. Some guests stood up. Others covered their mouths in horror. Then, the marriage certificates, the 3 previous marriages, the fake names, the fraud reports. Valerie tried to run, but Miranda had already given the signal. 2 plainclothes officers entered through the side doors. "Veronica Lastieri, you are under arrest for aggravated fraud, use of a false identity, and criminal conspiracy." "No, this is a mistake. Matthew, tell them it's a mistake." But Matthew just looked at her with a chilling coldness. "The only mistake was believing you loved me." The officers handcuffed her right there, in front of the altar, still in her wedding dress. "Let me go. You can't do this." At that moment, 2 other officers entered with Robert. The accountant was trying to break free, yelling that it was all a misunderstanding. The church was chaos, people shouting, crying, taking pictures. Social media was about to explode. Valerie searched for me with her eyes as they dragged her out. Her eyes, once so sweet and calculating, now burned with pure hatred. "You old bitch, this isn't over." I held her gaze without flinching. "For you, it is." They pulled her out of the church as she screamed, fought, and cursed. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Matthew spoke, his voice amplified by Father Julian's microphone. "I am so sorry about this. I know you all came for a wedding, but sometimes the truth must be revealed. no matter how much it hurts. He stepped down from the altar and walked toward me. He hugged me tightly, and in that hug, I felt him trembling, not from fear, from relief. The days following the collapse at the altar were a whirlwind. The story went viral in hours. Videos filmed by guests circulated on every social media platform. Local news stations covered the case. Reporters called the house at all hours wanting interviews. But I kept silent. I didn't need to make public explanations. The truth had already been revealed in the clearest way possible. Matthew stayed with me those first few nights. He didn't talk much. He spent hours sitting in the garden, staring into space, processing the betrayal. I made him coffee, left his favorite food on the table, sat beside him in silence. Sometimes a mother's love doesn't need words. A week after the incident, Miranda came to the house with news. Veronica Lastiri is in pretrial detention. Her defense tried to request bail, but the judge denied it due to flight risk. The charges are solid: 3 prior documented cases of fraud, use of a false identity, criminal conspiracy with Damian Cortez. And Damian, he was arrested in Miami trying to flee to Guatemala. He's also in custody. And Robert Aguirre confessed to everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. He gave names, dates, money movements. His testimony is key to burying the other 2. How long will they be locked up? The DA is asking for 12 to 15 years for Veronica, given the aggravated fraud and repeat offenses. For Damian, 10 to 12. Robert, as a cooperating witness, will probably get 5 or 6. I nodded slowly. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough to make up for the damage they had caused, but it was justice. There's something else. Miranda continued pulling documents from her briefcase. We recovered the $340,000 that Robert had moved. It was in a temporary account that hadn't been emptied yet. The bank cooperated fully once we presented the court orders. All of it, every penny, plus interest, a total of $357,000. For the first time in days, I felt something close to relief. Furthermore, Miranda continued, Veronica's other 3 victims have been in touch. Rodrigo Salazar from Phoenix, Antonio Bermudez from Indiana, and Fernando Rios from Austin. They are all filing new lawsuits with the evidence we gathered. It's likely the cases will be consolidated, and the sentence will increase. Will they get their money back? That's more complicated. Veronica spent most of it, but there are some properties registered to shell companies that can be seized. They won't get everything back, but something is better than nothing. Miranda closed her briefcase and looked at me. You did the right thing, Mrs. Reyes. I know it was painful. I know you had to watch your son suffer, but you saved his future, and you probably saved dozens of future victims. I don't feel like a hero. Heroes rarely do. That afternoon, Matthew finally really spoke to me. We were in the kitchen. I was making the chili he loved so much, the one I had learned from my mother, and the one I hoped to one day teach, to the right woman. Mom, I need to ask you something. Tell me, son. Did you ever doubt? Did you ever think that maybe you were wrong and that she really loved me? I stopped. I put the spoon down. I turned to look at him. Never. From the moment I heard her plans, I knew exactly who she was, and I knew I had to protect you, no matter the cost. But you made me go through all of that. The dinner where you announced the gifts. Watching her pretend to be excited, planning the honeymoon, all while knowing it was a lie. I needed sufficient proof, Matthew, and I needed her to feel so secure that she would make mistakes. Confident people get sloppy. He was silent for a long time. For days. I hated you for not telling me sooner, for letting it get all the way to the altar, for humiliating her publicly instead of handling it privately. My heart clenched. And now, I understand that if you had done it any other way, she would have escaped. She would have found another victim, another innocent man who believed her story, and it all would have been for nothing. He stood up and hugged me, a long, tight hug, the kind you only give when words aren't enough. Thank you, Mom, for being stronger than I was, for doing what I couldn't have done. I cried in his arms. All the tears I had held back for weeks finally came out. 3 months later, the trial concluded. Veronica Lestieri was sentenced to 14 years in prison for aggravated fraud use of a false identity and criminal conspiracy. No possibility of parole. Damian Cortez received 12 years for the same charges. Robert Aguirre, as a cooperating witness, received 6 years with the possibility of reduction for good behavior. The news was in all the papers. Marriage scammer finally convicted. The headlines read. They included her mugshot. No makeup, no perfect hair, no practiced smile, just a 32-year-old woman who would finally have to face the consequences of her actions. But I didn't celebrate, because even though justice had been served, my son's heart was still broken. He was still wary of new people. He still wondered if he could ever love again without suspicion. That, more than the stolen money, was the real wound. One afternoon, 4 months after the incident, Matthew and I went to the cemetery to visit Henry's grave. I brought purple irises, his favorite flowers. I placed them in the vase next to the gray granite headstone where his name was engraved. Henry Reyes, beloved husband, exemplary father. Dad, Matthew spoke, I want you to know, Mom saved me. I know it was you who warned her. Thank you for still taking care of me, even from where you are. I knelt and touched the headstone, feeling the cold stone under my fingers. Thank you for the dream, my love, for not leaving me alone, for showing me the way when I needed it most. The wind blew gently, moving the branches of the trees around us. For a moment, just a second, I felt something warm on my back, like a familiar hand, like a hug I knew by heart, and I knew Henry had heard us. 6 months later, I donated the recovered $357,000 to a foundation that helps victims of marriage fraud and romance scams. They named it the Henry Reyes Foundation, in my husband's honor. I didn't do it for publicity. I did it because I knew there were dozens, maybe hundreds, of people going through the same thing we went through, and if that money could help even one family avoid that destruction, it was worth it. Matthew started therapy. Slowly, he began to heal. He started to smile again. He started to trust again, although with more caution. He started going out with his friends again, making plans, looking toward the future. And I continued to run the factory, with new financial controls, with an honest accountant recommended by Patricia Solis, with the certainty that what Henry and I built would live on. A year after the day that should have been his wedding, Matthew came over for dinner. He had something in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in months. Hope. Mom, I met someone. My heart leaped, with fear at first. But then I saw his smile. It was different, more mature, more careful, yes, but also more genuine. Tell me. Her name is Elena. She's an architect. I met her at a conference on sustainable building. She's different, simple, honest, and most importantly, she insists we take things slow. She says real love isn't in a hurry. I'd like to meet her. That's why I came. I want you to meet her. But, well, slowly, Mom. No pressure, no expectations. Just meet her. That sounds perfect, son. That night after Matthew left, I stayed alone in the living room, looking at the family photos on the shelf, Henry and me at our wedding, Matthew as a baby, the whole family in front of the factory on opening day. And I understood something fundamental. A mother's love isn't about protecting her children from all pain. It's about giving them the tools to survive that pain, to be there when they fall, to help them get back up, and to have the courage to do the right thing, even when it hurts, even when it's costly, even when no one understands, because that's what mothers do. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. Sometimes our methods are questionable. But when it comes to protecting our children, we are relentless, and anyone who tries to hurt our children will discover There is no fury in this world comparable to that of a mother defending what she loves. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in a year, and I dreamed of Henry. He was smiling. Final reflection. Sometimes life presents us with impossible decisions, decisions where there is no right answer, only the least painful one. I could have stayed silent. I could have let my son learn the hard way. I could have washed my hands of it, saying, it's his life, his mistakes. But I didn't, because true wealth isn't in what you own. It's in what you refuse to let anyone take from you. And nobody, absolutely nobody, was going to take my son's future from him, as long as I had air in my lungs. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on the value of protecting those you love no matter the cost, leave me a comment telling me where you're watching from. Share this story with someone who needs to remember they aren't alone, that justice exists, and that sometimes the greatest love is the one that has the courage to do the hard thing. Give it a like if you believe that mothers always know, even when it seems like they don't. And subscribe to Elderly Stories to keep hearing stories of life, of struggle, of those silent battles we fight every day for the people we love. Because we all have a story, and they all deserve to be told. End.